Well, good morning, folks. Welcome to this week's education slot. Sorry I'm not with you. I'm heading down to Invercargill today to do a bit of work for the council. So this week's topic is a little bit different. Sometimes these education slots, especially when I do them, focus on skills and mindset. But today I want to talk to you about ESG. Now, if you've not heard of ESG, it stands for Environment, Social and Governance. And the reality is that about 70% of small business owners really don't know too much about it. In fact, they might not really have a clue. So I'm going to encourage you to think about it a little bit more. I've been reminded to talk about this topic for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm writing a paper for one of my clients on the topic at the moment. But over the last few weeks at BNI, we've had people like Aaron get up and say that partners in grime are not using any chemicals in their cleaners. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Sean was talking about his move towards battery-powered machinery as opposed to petrol. So it became a little bit top of mind. So what is ESG? Well, basically ESG is everything to do with your business that isn't numbers related, all right? And it stands for Environment, Social and Governance. So the environment, so some of this is a little bit obvious, I guess, but all of your companies, all of your businesses are impacted by and impact the environment in some way. It could be in terms of the energy and resources that you use. It could be in terms of the waste that you discharge, but all of this impacts living things in some way. Then there's social. So social is how your business operates within society. How do you interact within the community? What are your internal policies relating to labour, staff, diversity, inclusion, and things like that. And you know, the reality is that COVID has focused our attention on things like human rights and equality. And then the third thing is governance. So governance is everything that you need to run your business. It's all the policies, processes, procedures, that side of things. Now, as a business owner or working in a business, very often our focus is on the governance side because you can't run a business without it. But the focus on E and S is often less. And I'm going to encourage you, because I think even for a small business, having a policy on ESG right now is probably a good thing, because you can increase your customer base. There's plenty of research that shows that customers are increasingly buying from companies that they trust from an environmental, sustainable or social perspective. Equally, I read the other day that 44% of people have stopped buying from companies that they don't trust from an environment perspective. So there are benefits to be gained in terms of customer acquisition and retention. Equally, the same can apply to your staff. Okay, the reality is that generally now employees like to work for companies that are having a positive impact on the world. And so you're more likely to recruit the right people, I would suggest, and retain them for longer. And then, of course, there's some financial benefits as well. Moving to digital platforms and digitization can certainly help in terms of improving productivity and efficiency and reducing cost. So, and the other thing, is that having a good ESG policy brings you closer to the community. Small businesses are inherently generally closer to the community, but having a strong ESG policy, I think, does that even more. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to encourage you to think about this a little bit more. Under the environment, for instance, as a business, can you travel less? Can you hold more virtual meetings? Something I'm certainly trying to do. Can you use less natural resources? Can you get the bike out? Can you use public transport more? From a supply chain perspective, can you start sourcing your supplies from suppliers that are closer? Because your supply chain will say a lot about your business from a carbon footprint perspective. Maybe you can print less. Did you know that the average office worker prints an astonishing 10,000 sheets of paper a year? Maybe you can recycle, repurpose, upcycle. So there's lots of opportunities to think about this stuff. Now, if you can't do any of this stuff, well, maybe you can offset your carbon footprint in another way. So that's the environment. Under social, maybe there's an opportunity to think about whether you can improve your policies around diversity and inclusion. Maybe you've noticed there's a bit of unconscious bias in your business that you can eliminate. Maybe you can improve working conditions, provide more training, focus on mental well-being and that side of things. Or maybe you can just promote a better culture within the business. So yes, there might be an upfront cost associated with, but I think the chances are that you will improve efficiency. You'll certainly build stronger relationships with staff, customers, suppliers, and the community. So I think if you've got a good story to tell on this topic, you should tell it already. Include it, advertise it, put it in your marketing, put it in your sales proposals, include something in your quotations, obviously include it in your customer conversations, and maybe even in your recruitment process. If you haven't got a good story to tell, well, it's certainly not too late, but maybe now's the time to start building a narrative around it. So I'm by no means an expert, but I have been doing a bit of research into this recently. I found some really good government resources which you might find useful. But it's really made me think about it from the perspective of my own business. I certainly run a lot more workshops virtually now, a lot more meetings. I'm trying to travel less. I'm certainly printing a lot less paper. So maybe there's things that you can do as well. So look, ignorance is bliss, but ignorance on ESG could end up being quite costly, and I think could be a lost opportunity for a lot of businesses. So I strongly encourage you to think about even putting in the smallest policies and procedures and thinking about ESG, environment, social and governance. If you haven't heard about it, I think you will increasingly do so. So that's it for today's education slot. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of the morning.